So, first of all, we want to thank you for coming on. Everyone here is very happy to see you. We've all seen you on YouTube. Everyone knows your name, and it's great to see you here. And we're going to talk about, I think, some fun topics tonight.
Oh,
Um,
well, hell yeah.
yeah. So one thing that we have planned is a little fun game show. And you could actually win a T-shirt if you win the game show. You get a very special Pangburn T-shirt.
Oh,
Uh,
shit. Really upping my
yeah,
fashion arc then. Absolutely.
of course you have to.
Real.
And
Every day.
it's based. So, should we start with the game show just to get the thing rolling and break
Why
the
not?
ice a little
I
bit?
mean, let's have some fun. Go
What
ahead.
the heck?
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we're gonna. But before that, what do you want to tell? What's the one thing, Vosh, that you want to tell people who don't know who you are?
Oh, Jesus. You gotta really distill it, I think, to get it down to that. Yeah, I'm a libertarian socialist, and I like libertarian socialism. And if either of those terms, either on their own or in juxtaposition, don't make much sense to you, then that means you should watch my videos.
Oh,
Oh no.
Did we lose Don Don?
No.
We lost
Oh my
Don
God.
Don.
We lost our captain. No.
Fail.
No,
Oh,
that's
Captain,
okay.
my captain. Everyone get up on your
Wow.
desk so when he comes back.
Yes,
While he's gone, just real quick, John, I'm sorry to interrupt you there.
No, ask. I think I know
Yeah,
what you're
Vosh, I've actually done studying with studies on libertarian socialism here recently, and I kind of like it. So, is there anything like specific that you can tell me so I can learn more about it?
Oh, well, apart from it being generally based in red-pilled, libertarianism was originally a socialist term. It was a socialist ideology that was kind of co-opted by free market economists back in the 20th century, Americans mostly, the bastards. It's when Marx wrote about what his goals were for social change that was oriented mostly around freedom.
Right.
I think the two ideas work pretty well in tandem.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what I got. Like, from what on my notes, it says libertarian socialists believe that people should voluntarily cooperate with each other in non-state institutions such as labor unions, cooperatives, and mutual aid societies. They believe that people should manage their own affairs either as individuals or as part of a group. So, I mean, everything I read about it seems to be kind of where I'm at. So that's why I wanted to learn more about it from you.
Yeah, well, God willing. I mean, I wouldn't want to take away from the show by rambling for 2 hours, but I'm happy to speak positively of it when I can.
Yeah.
So just to be clear, in order to get to that, just in the interim until Don Don comes back, that is awesome. You would need to go through an interim phase, correct? In order to get to the area where everybody's voluntarily cooperating. I mean, that's typically what I've heard, is that you have to go an interim phase of more governmental ownership. Is that right, or do you think that you could cut straight to the chase?
Well, I mean, I think that ultimately, when we're talking about moving towards socialism, we're talking about a shift in a broad economic sense and a shift in who's in power in more of a political sense. And I think it's much easier to bring about the political change than it is to bring about the economic change, because we're a global economy now. There are so many interdependent supply lines that no one person fully understands, that work like that has to be done incrementally. It has to be done carefully. You don't want to cause any food shortages or anything like that. The political stuff, on the other hand, is relatively simple. The abolition of the bourgeoisie as a class is a much more approachable goal than total decommodification. So a transitory system then would be a proletarian state, or what used to be called a proletarian dictatorship, something that you could use to leverage the political will of the workers while keeping a lot of the complex economic stuff more towards the back burner.
Was that how it was in the past, like in certain communist states?
Well, usually what happened in so-called states is that the leader of the Revolutionary Army would immediately crack down on all dissidents, kill the anarchists, and institute... Right. So there are lots of wacky ways these things tend to work out in practice, but, God willing, one day we'll do it without that.
John, do you remember me asking you about market socialism?
Yeah, I mean, yes, you did. You should ask, but market socialism,
go ahead, John. You can ask.
Libertarian socialism, as far as I understand, correct?
I was just not understand. I haven't looked into it yet, so I just kind of wanted to understand what market socialism is, and it might help the audience to know what it is too. So,
Yeah,
Well, it seems to be similar.
yeah, market socialism is the transitory point. You maintain the market economy. People still work for money, use money to buy food or hats or whatever. Um, but there's a socialistic element in that you have economic democracy. Workers are controlled by the people who work there. They're owned and operated by the workers, not by a capitalist who sits on top. And as a product of that, there would not be a capitalist class. So you would have the political power entirely backed by proletarian interests while maintaining a market economy. It's always meant to be a transitory point, of course, because it's kind of like playing with fire. Keeping capital around as a concept in market socialism sort of begs the reemergence of a capital class. So the idea would be that you only do this for as long as you need to in order to secure the political power that lets you do that economic reform.
I see.
Well, see. Now you've raised a couple of things that I find slightly problematic, but unfortunately, this is
We had Don back.
Don just came back.
Let's
Saved by the bell.
And the power went out all day. I've been testing.
What?
Yeah. It's the most unbelievable.
we had
thing.
fun. It's all good.
We had fun.
What did I miss?
Well, we asked about libertarian socialism and market socialism, and then John was about to lay out some of his disagreements.
Go ahead, do that. Don't let me bother that.
Okay, I have a bit of a question, which is what you seem to be saying when you say get rid of the capitalist class seems to be opting towards more of a worker co-op situation as the general rule of thumb for businesses. I would think that there might be some situations in which a worker co-op might not be the best option, at least even theoretically. So I think you run into the problem potentially of people who maybe don't want to work in a worker co-op and would prefer a level of stability, or would prefer to be managed that way, or think that leadership would be better if you had somebody specialized at the top instead of the more employee-run type of stuff. Would that be allowed under your system? Do you think that would not even happen? I'm like, how do you deal with that?
Well, worker cooperatives, or even the ones that exist today, are fully allowed to elect their own management. And by that system, if people want someone with some special competence or technological knowledge to lead them in a given field, then yeah, they can certainly vote for it. In terms of like direct capital ownership, as in if people would prefer to work in a business where it is completely top down, where all control is directed towards the owner with no control given to the workers, that would certainly not be allowed. No more so than we would allow somebody to become a king today, even if the subjects of their house were, fully willing to go along with it.
So would the idea of like stock ownership for people who don't work in the company just be completely gone, like outside investment?
Yeah, we can't have that. There can be systems of investment, but not stock. Because as soon as you do that, then you have people owning a portion of the company who don't work there, and that immediately sort of reestablishes the problem.
Yes.
Do you have to work there to have a stake in the success of the company and its productivity and efficiency?
Well, it's not a matter of whether or not you have a stake. It's a matter of whether or not you are a part of the system that is actually producing from that company. I mean, socially, everyone benefits from companies that provide to the public good doing well, but you're going to have to provide that incentive through ways other than stock ownership. Because otherwise, you have capital reinvestment. You get the exact same problem with people benefiting massively from the hard work of other people and, forming their sort of capital empire based entirely off of reinvestment.
I mean, I'm not super sure that that's a problem. I'd be curious. I don't want it to go all day about
that's
this.
Capitalism. That's the whole system.
Right. Well, I mean, if you haven't been able to tell, I'm somewhat partial to the system because, well, obviously people who outside buy stock aren't working as hard in terms of labor. They're still contributing an awful lot of value, probably more value than even the hardest working individual employee.
Yeah, but then they take that value back because that's the whole point of the stock ownership. They're not giving away something for nothing. In exchange for the investment money, they expect returns on their investment. Ultimately, the whole point of investment is to make more money, not to give. I'm okay with investment projects that have no expectation of return. If you're really invested in the success of a business, give it money.
Sure, but either way you generate. Here's a problem though that I see. There's like 2 or 3 problems here. Is the motive doesn't matter because either way you're getting investment. 2, I think the desire to have a money or profit kickback actually makes you more selective with your investments. Instead of just placing it where like you feel like you might feel good. You place your money on companies that you think will actually succeed, which means those are the companies that are actually going to be productive and contribute to the public good.
Well, you're likely to invest in what you think will make you money. And as we have the system now, we have shareholders who elect CEOs, and CEOs are legally obligated to do what is in the good of the shareholder. And what this means is that a lot of these companies get hollowed out for short-term investor profits. The CEOs get a golden parachute and they sell it and it's on the way. Every year we see more closures of existing firms because, as it turns out, the needs of the capital owning class and the needs of the public at large are totally separate from each other. The idea that like capital investment is done to the public good, or that it benefits or prioritize the good. There are plenty of ways to economically incentivize productivity within a company that don't involve handing over ownership to a small group of elites outside the company. After all.
Don, I saw you shaking
I'm
your head.
curious what ways that might be, but we might have to continue that conversation a bit later.
Well, if it's a good functional business, people should shop there and give it money, should they not?
Well, of course they should, but the decisions made at the top of the business are best made by people with a awful lot of stake, is all my point. And to your point of investing without potential for profit kickback, that seems to be a little bit of a rosier view of human nature than I take about people who are willing to invest money in companies.
Why not do grants?
That much investment without them asking, well, what's in it for me?
But we have grant systems. Canada's government gives grants to artistic projects they think might be worthwhile and benefit the public good. Like Cuphead was funded through it, for example. If we had a lot of money being kicked back through local, state, and national governments, a sort of grant application system for people who need capital to finance their startups but don't have it in their pocket seems like it'd be a good way to sort of direct public wealth towards public good.
So I can actually compromise with you there. On the local level, I can actually see a real argument for grants. My concern is that the more nationalized you get, the less stake that the government has in it, right? Because as much as the motive of people who invest privately in the stock market can be, just for self-gain, I find that in many cases, the government, because it's not their money, because they're using taxpayer money, they tend to not have much of a stake in what they're investing in beyond, ooh, that sounds nice, or ooh, this will make me politically popular, without driving into the hard numbers of if this business will be successful, which is something that investors who are looking for a profit kickback have to look into.
But politicians
I don't really believe in the wisdom or the prudence of government.
Well, we're not talking about the wisdom of government. I mean, you don't want to put much faith.
You kind of are if you're talking about grants, of picking the good companies to invest in. You're kind of trusting them a little bit.
Well, trusting investors has not historically been a very wise decision when it comes to nationwide economic management, for one. And for two, these grants aren't given by politicians. They're handed out by committees that you apply to. They wouldn't be handed out for woke points or, for the benefit of somebody's campaign. It would just be something you could apply to, simple, ordinary, bureaucratic. I don't want there to be a system where people can sort of, slingshot themselves into rags or riches situations where corporations can either go like multinational, multi-trillion-dollar whatever, or not. The business should be local. It should be ordinary. The business should be something that serves the local and public good. But right now, like, we've seen the opposite. Through mega corporations like Walmart, we've seen wealth stripped out of the neighborhoods where these Walmarts are placed.
Yes,
because
exactly.
It's down to a difference in material interests. On a surface level, on an Econ 101 level, Walmart seems like it would be economically beneficial for everyone because the products it offers are so cheap. But of course, there were microeconomies in these towns beforehand. Sure, the goods cost more, but people were paid more for their work because when those goods cost more, the money went back
shut
into
it
the
down
community.
slowly.
Yeah, but the money that goes into Walmart just gets siphoned out. It doesn't re-enter the
Right, to the
community.
shareholders and
Precisely. So a lot of times, John, when we think about, does a businessman or the CEO know how to invest the money properly into the economy of the society or the people who work there? People don't work at a job when they're 10,000 miles away from it unless they have the luxury of being, college educated and they work for like an accounting firm. If you work at a brick and mortar store and that brick and mortar store is Walmart or Target, the profits from that store don't go back into the community that you're in.
No,
It gets
they don't.
siphoned out
I know.
into whatever other projects they're using. But
Yeah, I understand this. Believe me.
shouldn't that say in that decision be in those who are inside that business those who are a part of it, shouldn't they make a decision the same way that we stop letting kings make decisions for us? Why are we letting capitalists do it?
Well, first of all, I know that I've been cast as a pure capitalist just because I'm talking to you, but in actuality, I do have my misgivings, and mass corporatism and the death of localism is a big part of the reason.
Well, you were just agreeing a moment ago about the local.
Yeah, which is why
yeah.
I would be sympathetic to some sort of grant thing on the local level specifically is where I would be interested. I would say if I wanted to put my Tom Sowell hat on, that those people who work in those companies do agree to it by continuing to work there and continuing to shop there. They're voting with their dollar. I
Well,
realize
that's not really fair, right? Like, no,
well,
that's
fair, maybe not, but true a little bit.
yeah. But
Let
if
him get
if
in.
it's not like if that doesn't lead to rational decision making when it comes to resource allocation, we don't have to like play by those rules. Like if we look at the effects of Walmart in local communities, we can't go like, well, they chose to do that. They all understood what like the long-standing decades-wide economic consequences would be because they continued to buy goods at a lower price than they did previously. Economically, people will do what's in their best interest, right? So we just have to shape society until people's best interests are what's like the public good.
Okay, so this is the issue is that I think I get really, really nervous about the idea of anybody, quote unquote, shaping society because as you're so concerned about corruption, I am too. I'm concerned about it everywhere, which is why I like most of the power centralized locally and why on the national level I'm very hesitant about stuff like grants because I'm aware that both the private investors and the public are necessarily going to be corrupt and are necessarily going to be dumb and are almost certainly not really going to be orienting us to the common good because I just have I have a negative view of how things at national
But
organization
see,
level.
you're
The only
making my argument for me though, because that's my argument against shareholders. Because
right,
shareholders
I'm
are not
getting
only
that.
like national entities, shareholders are international entities in many
Yes.
cases. Like
Mhm.
ungodly amounts of wealth controlled by a small group of people who don't even have
Correct.
like national affiliation.
Mm-hmm.
So in the same way that you would prioritize local decision making when it comes to like these incentive structures, so would I. Let the workers who work there make the decisions when it comes to how they should run their company. I think you'll get much better outcomes that way.
Yes.
So just to finish the point is again I agree with the localism thing, but my problem is that I don't actually trust the idea that the workers aren't just going to metastasize into a new form of government by committee that can be similarly corrupt. At least when you generalize to the level of national. Now the problem gets worse at the international level, but not enough for me for it to overcome this guarantee. Because when I know that once you hit national and international levels, things are always corrupt and are always dirty. But the one thing I do know is at the very least, the private investors are always going to be looking out for production efficiency. And I don't know that that's always going to be true for the government.
We are using the word always a lot here, so let's be careful.
Well, I
Almost
mean,
much more often.
that's
are going
like
to be
defending authoritarianism because democracy has the potential to be corrupt. Like, first of all, I disagree that investors are always looking out for production efficiency. I think they're looking out for their own profits, and I think that's really easy to substantiate when it comes to their behavior. Like like every major corporation has stockholders. There are very few privately owned ones, and consistently, it seems like we see time after time after time that the shareholders will elect CEOs who will bring about short-term gains for them, or they'll do things that are good for the company in like an economically productive sense, but not good for society broadly, or as is always the case, not good for the workers at that company. I think that like I think that like the myth of shareholder competence should have been like fully destroyed back in 2008. And then the Panama Papers, where it turned out that they're hoarding tens of trillions of dollars illegally offshore. There's like it's like so obvious how hard they're f***ing the system because they're not like people who live and work here. They're not accountable to what they do and say. They're these like invisible, shiftless forces that use money that gets managed by the people they hire to control ungodly amounts of wealth and capital flow, just like as a matter of course, you know? And I think that if you bring this down to the local level, which I think does make stuff more trustworthy, if we bring this down to the workers level, not only do we not have the prior issues of like, you know, government being controlled by a very small number of people with different interests than the rest of everyone, but we also see like democratic accountability. If a company's doing really badly, it's no longer this like, oh, well, somebody can just like make a bunch of money off of short-term gains then dip. That can't happen anymore. Now you're really in it for the long haul.
Yeah, so I would say that a lot of last point here, and I'm not gonna push too much, is that a lot of your issues are things that I would have some policy ideas of how to prevent. I think there's a little bit of protectionism that might be in order. If you want to regulate the stock market in some way to prevent like buys and sells happening too quickly, I'd be open to that. I think we've lost a lot of our spine when it comes to trust busting. I much more enjoy Teddy Roosevelt on that sort of thing. So I think that there's a lot of negotiation room here. But I think I don't want to hold up the show any longer. I want to kind
I've
of.
I mean,
enjoyed.
no, you're not holding up the show. I thought it was a good
Yeah.
conversation. I want to
Yeah, yeah.
apologize. I mean, God
I think
decided to
it's
strike
interesting.
in ungodly times, so
No, I'm
that
happy
really
to.
sucks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
of
it's
course.
really it's definitely.
I've been enjoying this conversation quite a bit, so
I,
don't worry.
I think that a big problem in like this discussion, John, and I think what you're like, oh, it works on a local level, but does it work on an international level or wherever it might be, is kind of asking, well, how do we cooperate internationally? Trade is international, right? Commerce is international. We have money exchanges. So how in the world are we supposed to govern that world without actually taking into account what people want, and we're just left putting in the hand of those who have the wealth?
Yeah, I mean, that's not really my concern. My concern is really that if you have the workers run the show, whatever workers get elected are eventually, I think, going to be corrupted by the power pretty quickly because that's my view of human nature. And will and the government, if they're doing the sponsorships, they won't have a personal profit stake, so they will make even less informed decisions.
Well, wait,
At least national
I
level.
have a question about that on both
Yeah,
points.
yeah,
Because the government already awards grants to a whole bunch of like research-oriented stuff, and a bunch of the
Yes.
products that are made by private companies are based on public research. So it seems
Yes.
like there's a precedent for intelligent grant writing on a
this is
government level, at least at some point. But
yeah.
also, what you've said about worker corruption, like you said, like, well, if a worker gets elected, they become corrupt. Well, then why aren't the shareholders corrupt? Because the shareholders, well, then I don't know how that's a point.
Yeah,
Because
no, no,
if
that's
a
my point. Is that
shareholder
everyone?
if a
No, my point is
shareholder
that
is
everyone's corrupt.
corrupt, like nothing can stop them. Like they're totally and completely unbound. They have the money to do anything they want. But if an elected worker representative is corrupt, it's a pretty simple matter to replace them. And if they don't get replaced, then yeah,
See, we
democracy
say
has no
that, and yet
problems.
we don't kick our corrupt politicians out of office, especially not on the national
Would it
level.
be better if they were kings? I mean, I feel like there is
No,
at
but
least some degree of voter susceptibility to your
yeah,
politicians.
I mean, I think that we might be just be coming from fundamentally different places here because I don't think the metaphor of treating the economy like a system of government that could be kingly or democratic is really the way that I look at it. I think everyone's corrupt, but I think at least the shareholders, unlike the government, are interested in getting their profit back, which means they're actually interested in the company's productivity and success in most cases. Sometimes they pump and dump, and I would be totally cool with regulations to prevent that sort of thing.
Why wouldn't elected workers have that same interest though?
Not why wouldn't they have the same interest to get their profit back?
Like why wouldn't they have the interest to run the company well? If the company doesn't do well, they make less money. Even if they're corrupt, wouldn't they also be monetarily
I
incentivized?
thought we were well on the local level. Sure, I thought we weren't talking about worker co-ops. We were talking about grant allocations.
Well, with grant, we know that government grant allocations can be for the public good because we see it happen when
Sometimes,
it
but
comes to
but like
research.
subsidies also suck. Like part of the like
Well,
I'm from
not
California.
subsidies, just grant allocations. Like if you think you have a promising business idea in downtown and there's like a space that's open, you can like submit a bid and say, well, what do I want to do with this space? Well, I would turn this into a barcade and here's some like concept designs that I have for the floor plan. And then you can make a case for it like at a town meeting or something. Let the public decide, you know? The public have to suffer the opening of a business no one cares for?
Right again at a town, sure, because I think that at that level, the
Well,
politics.
then John? But how do you then scale that to the fact that economies are not just localized to your town? They're not. You're
I don't
almost ignoring
want
the
to scale
fact
it.
that you
That's the
don't
point.
want economies to scale outside of a local area.
No, I don't want this idea of governmental grant approval to generally scale in all things out to the national level.
Is it because government is icky or something? Like I'm not
I
following.
mean, kind of a little bit. You can put
Well,
it that
John,
way.
you did say that "quote unquote" everyone is corrupt.
Correct. It's
Ooh,
true.
that's a rough
You have to
one.
make that assumption anyway.
Well, I think I worry about that because I feel like like everyone is corrupt is kind of a giant cope. Because in reality, like history is full of examples of organizations and people who have been noble or ignoble, people who have been competent or incompetent, people who have been truthful and not. And it seems like more often than not, it doesn't just because like saying, well, everyone's corrupt is kind of like a person defending capitalism and saying, well, everyone is greedy. That's not true. If you look anthropologically, humans rose to the top of our planet because of our cooperative abilities. And we try to rationalize like why things are. I think things are the way they are because of material interest. I think that for all of human history, it's been very easy to accumulate power and wealth in a small, centralized hierarchy. And as time has gone on, we've tried to push back against that. Like we have liberalism, we have the concept of democracy, and we found that like because I feel like if you like went back 1,000 years ago and you had like a bunch of peasants talking, they'd be like, "Wow, our king is like a drunken, incestuous, murderous lunatic who like slaughters people who disagree." And then they're like, "Oh, everyone's like that. If you were king, you'd do the same." They're like, "Mm-mm," and it's like, well, no, actually, that's not true. Because maybe the institution of king makes monsters of men, but men aren't necessarily like that. And I think it's kind of like that, you know? Worker co-ops already exist, and people there tend to be happier and more productive and produce more wealth than people at traditional corporations. So it's like, maybe people aren't all corrupt. Maybe we can build systems where people are happy.
Let me explain myself. When I say, everyone's corrupt, I'm not saying that literally everyone everywhere is corrupt. I'm saying that when you build systems, especially the larger you get, right? Because the social fabric tends to get thinner the more you scale any system. You should make the underlying assumption that everybody is self-interested and corrupt. That way you can set the proper checks and balances and incentives.
So that's just naturally how a hierarchy works.
I don't think I think human beings are pro-social, but I also think that, we're not angels or demons, and we definitely have a worse side of our nature that we always have to be aware of, and we can't happy talk our way out of it, especially not on the national level. And I'm not saying that you're saying that, but that's what I mean when I say
So I think that like while you're saying we have systems and these systems be corrupted, but what we can do is not be like, wow, this is having issues. I don't want it. It sucks. As opposed to saying, well, we have these systems, so how do we manage them? How do we create them? How do we make sure that voters are enfranchised? We make sure the voters are educated. Make sure that the workers have a stake. We make sure that anyone who's a part of it can actually participate in a way that doesn't lend towards corruption. We can work that out as long as we understand that we need governance instead of just being ew, governance icky. Let's stop doing that. Right? It's like my roof is leaky. I don't get rid of my roof. I just say I need a bigger roof, and I got to figure out how to give it the support that it needs to stop me from getting, weathered or whatever.
Assuming corruption from the start in any system, I don't know if that's a good way to go about it. But I understand that like current hierarchies probably do breed narcissists or narcissistic tendencies in people. You know what I mean? But does that mean that any hierarchy that's going to ever happen is going to be corrupt by its very nature just because of the people? I don't know.
I think yes, generally.
Okay.
I think that human beings are inherently susceptible to corruption, and I think that you should take that into account when you're building systems.
Well, do you think democracy is institutionally preferable to like monarchy or authoritarianism?
Yeah, probably.
Probably.
Yeah, I mean, I've had recent internal doubts about this. I'd say that I still think it. I have always thought, and I will always think that the government needs to be accountable to its people. Exactly how that happens, I've had some thoughts on it. I've reached a transition point. I'm not sure what I believe.
What mechanism could you use to hold the government to account outside of democracy?
I mean, I think that. I don't know. This is why I find myself not super happy with democracy, but I also find myself at a lack of other options. Great quote: "Democracy is the worst system of government except for all the other ones." I mean, I think representative republics, which really moderate democracy, making sure it's constitutionally bounded, so you don't have, mob rule and stuff like that's all very good.
Well, we already have preventions against mob rule.
I know that. Again, I'm just telling you. I'm not saying it makes the most sense.
I understand. I think it's just I mean, I agree with like government accountability being a necessary prior. I think the issue, like the socialist answer to this, would be that the problem is with bourgeois democracy. The problem right now is that politicians don't give a fuck about the average person because they are almost exclusively lobbied by and talking with members of the bourgeoisie. Like the people who give them money, the people who fund their campaigns, the people who talk with them from their own parties, at every single level, they are day in and day out nonstop insulated with the both wealth and the perspectives of people with very different class interests from 99.9% of people. And I think that it's functionally like a new aristocracy, right? Like international capital and the shareholders who control it don't live lives like you and me. Certainly their interests aren't the same as yours and mine. Like it's totally disconnected. So I think the problem is those people have way too much influence. I think that a proletarian state, a worker democracy, would resolve many of the issues we have with corruption, because it seems like so much of the corruption that we see is just politicians, in order to get voted in, have to pretend to be sympathetic to the proletariat, but in reality they aren't, so they lie, and almost always that lying is to resolve the disconnect between what their actual interests are and what they say they are. Likewise, not just with corruption, but just one last point, then I'm done. Not just with corruption, and what they lie about, but also like when we see how they behave and how they campaign, it's so much of it is oriented around like bullshit talking points that are fronted by corporate-owned media, and it's like the whole climate change debate. There would be no debate in this country or in many other countries about whether or not climate change is anthropogenic, were it not specifically for Rupert Murdoch. Rupert Murdoch, because he is friends with coal and oil billionaires, went around and set up shop in America, in Australia, in other places, you know, all over the place. And literally, like, one guy, because he's friends with maybe a dozen people who make a lot of money off of fossil fuels, just single-handedly shifted the Earth closer to oblivion. The fact that that's even possible is insane, you know?
It is.
Yeah. So,
but I'm gonna move us off this point. I'm gonna move us off this point. And the reason why, because
this has been great, man. I'm loving this.
I made a game show, a little quiz, you know, that we can have fun with, that I think highlights this and gonna give us a lot of things to talk about. So here it is. Hope everyone can see it. What it's called is Who Said What? Democrats versus Republicans. Is it not working right now?
There we go.
There we go. Who said what? Democrats versus Republicans. So the rules of the game are very simple. There's going to be a quote, and you're going to have to guess who it is. If it's a Democrat or Republican saying it, that gives you 1 point. And if you get 3 points, if you can guess also who said the quote itself. Are you guys ready? Vosh, you ready? John, you ready?
I'm going to be terrible at this. Absolutely.
I'm terrible at it.
Okay, first quote. Take out a credit card from the Bank of China in the name of our children, driving up our national debt. Take out a credit card from the Bank of China in the name of our children, driving up our national debt.
Oh, this could be anybody.
Yeah, that could be either. I feel like it's 60-40 R, but I'm gonna say Democrat.
Okay, Vosh is going Democrat. John, who are you saying?
I'll say Republican.
Are you gonna guess which politician? Because that's gonna be extra points.
Yeah, I'll let's say John McCain.
McCain. Tart, what do you guess?
Just because of the language is old timey.
I'm gonna go Republican, but I don't have a guess as far as who. I don't know.
Thomas?
Just for the hell of it, I'll say Democrat, and it's I can't even remember Bernie Sanders.
Bernie Sanders. Gosh, do you have a guess on which politician?
No, I have no idea, and I'm being contrarian by saying Democrat. I feel like for Republican would say something more oppositional. They would use like aggressive language. So maybe you know, it could be either, but I'm going to stick with Democrat.
Well, that's why I went with McCain, because he's kind of the more genteel. Like brand.
Like
did Tart give his?
Yeah.
Guess?
Yeah,
Tart said Republican.
Okay, reveal.
Let's see, reveal.
The suspense.
What's it doing?
Oh, come on.
Got a credit card from the Bank of China.
Yes.
In the name of our children, driving up our national debt from $5 trillion.
I knew it was a neocon.
Obama talking about fiscal responsibility.
Of course. Doesn't get any funnier than that. Doesn't get any fun. Let's do the next one. I should just
guess the opposite of what my instincts say, and I'll probably be right more often.
The next one is, we could have a sitting president under felony indictment and would ultimately be a criminal trial. It would grind government to a halt. We need a government that can work and work well for the American people. Who said this?
Oh, I know this. It's a Republican. It's Trump.
Okay, John said it's Trump.
I'm actually going to say R, and I'm going to say Chris Christie.
Okay.
Ooh, that's a good call.
I'm gonna trust John. If he said if he had it that quick, I'm going with John. It's Trump.
It's the pattern recognition. It sounds like him to me. Although
What? Oh, come on. That's not a good reason.
yeah, well, I feel like he's talking about Hillary. No, wait. Actually, Vosh might be right. We'll see. Vosh might be right. Actually,
Maybe.
we'll
Maybe.
see. We'll go with the instincts.
Okay, let's see who it is. Come on.
No, it's good.
Why is this the laggiest thing I've ever experienced in
fingers
the
crossed.
entire... There we go. It's moving.
Where's the reveal?
Oh, come
Where's the
on.
reveal? It's coming. It's
Drum
coming. It's
roll,
coming.
please.
Come
Oh,
on.
dramatic tension.
Dramatic tension always.
well have a sitting president.
Who said Trump?
And ultimately,
I did.
John.
John.
So
John's got
John
it.
has 4 points.
it
John,
would
no, you have 3
grind
points.
government
Vosh has 1 point.
to a
Bart has 1
halt.
point.
We need a government that can work for the American people.
I've done enough Trump impressions. I recognize the cadence. It's beautiful.
I see.
Chris Christie was a really good guess, though. That's you.
Yeah, that was a good guess. That was a good guess.
That's
Yeah,
not
I
wrong.
didn't even think of the Hillary angle at first. That's a good one, though.
Yeah. Well, I knew Don's like trying to do the reverse psych, and since Trump is in trouble right now, I'm like, okay, it's probably an R. It'd be funnier if it's Trump. So you know.
Okay, the next quote is open borders. That's a Koch brothers proposal. It would make everybody. And oh, why did it go away? Come on. What
You
is
make everyone in
happening?
America poor. You do away with the notion of a nation state.
Yes, that's what it said.
Okay, I'm hard locking in D and Bernie.
D and Bernie. Okay.
Because
That's what I say.
because only a Democrat would mention the Koch brothers, and there are very, very few protections.
Oh no!
No, what is going on with this whole?
McConnell.
Oh well, I got it wrong. I got it wrong just in time to get it wrong.
No. You didn't get anything wrong. It's just something in the back scrubbed it forward like a million pages.
Oh, okay. I
Answers.
was thinking that's a remarkable thing for McConnell to say. My goodness.
Yeah, that would have been really weird.
Like wow,
It would grind.
Yeah.
Oh yes, the Trump clip.
Oh, it's me.
I'm gonna go with Bernie as well. I agree. I thought it was a D for mentioning the Koch brothers, and Bernie's like the lefty who I'm aware of who's like famous for like actually caring about nationalism like a little bit. So that would be my guess as well.
Yeah, his protectionist tendencies are like the one bad thing about him, and he mostly dropped it after 2020.
I'm so schizophrenic about protectionism, it's unreal. I have like the libertarian side of my brain and like the populist side of my brain.
Well,
it not
you're right.
working?
You guys are right. It is Bernie. It is Bernie. It's gonna pull up. It's
yeah.
gonna pull up. It was
We all
100%.
3
Bernie.
points.
3 points for
Points
Bausch.
for everybody.
Open borders.
Open borders.
That's a Koch brothers proposal. I mean, that's a right-wing proposal, which says essentially there is no United States.
But it would make a lot of the
global.
global poor richer, wouldn't it?
And it'd make everybody in America poor. Then you're doing away with the concept of a nation state.
Real.
Next question.
Bernie being correct about something.
We don't have enough police officers, and we're going to debate for the next 3 weeks, I'm told, gay marriage, a flag amendment, and God only knows what else. Look, marriage is between a man and a woman, and states must respect that.
Mitt Romney.
I'm gonna go with Democrat. It sounds like something maybe Hillary Clinton may have said, or even Obama back in like pre-2013.
Which name?
Yeah, I
Solid
think
name.
this is
I'm
either
gonna
Obama or
I'm gonna
Biden.
go with Obama.
Yeah.
Obama. You got to choose one, though, Vosh.
Yeah, okay, I'm going to say Obama as well, because Biden was always better on this than Obama was.
It's amazing you think that this one is bad. That's awesome. I think it's D, Obama. I agree.
It's the Obama.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I've been thinking.
We don't have enough police officers.
damn
and
it.
we're going to
Biden.
debate the next 3 weeks.
I had it!
I'm
Biden.
told.
We should have
Gay
known.
marriage,
I messed
a
Bosh up.
flag
My bad.
amendment, and God only knows what else. Look, marriage is between a man and a woman, and states must respect that.
Last question number 5. Let's go. So right now, let's just
Biden
figure out
would
the
enjoy
points.
that boy.
Does Biden actually like believe anything? Like just
I don't know.
I don't know. Whatever.
You talking about how many times he's changed his views?
Oh my God, it's unbelievable.
So right now the race is between John and Vosh. I think Vosh, you have 5 points at this moment.
I think
you guessed Bernie and you guessed 2, and John, you also have 5 points.
Beautiful.
You guessed so it's 5. So it's tie game. Let's see who wins this. I think
I
Thomas
voted
might have a
Bernie.
chance to. You voted Bernie. You did.
I did when it came
Oh,
out.
so you're at 3 points. You're at 3 points.
All right, go
How
ahead.
about
I'm delayed.
You could have a comeback.
I might.
Whatever he does, he accuses everyone else of doing. The man cannot tell the truth, but he combines it with being a narcissist. A narcissist at a level I don't think this country has ever seen.
Okay, so the person is talking about Trump, but I don't know who's saying it.
Jamie Raskin.
Is it? It has to be an actual politician, right?
Yes.
Okay, because my first instinct is Bill Maher, but I think I'm going to go D, Hillary Clinton. Although maybe that's too easy.
I feel like it might be one of the Republicans who ran against him in the 2016 primary. I'm going to go for a dark horse candidate. I'm going to say Ted Cruz.
Okay.
Ooh, Ted Cruz. That's a
interesting.
strong one.
Ted Cruz, I'm going to punch the air.
Tart?
I felt like it was like somebody from the January 6th committee. Go ahead, Tart.
I don't know. I'm thinking. I'm gonna say liberal, but I don't know who. So, no idea.
Okay.
Oh, come on. No, Ted Cruz.
Whatever he does, he accuses everyone
else.
else.
Ted Cruz.
The man cannot tell the truth, but he combines it with being a narcissist. A narcissist at a level I don't think this country's ever seen.
Let's go.
Oh,
Let's
man.
go.
Good job.
Bosch in the lead. Who did you say was John?
I'm still at 5, yeah. I thought I remember Ted Cruz being like very like the alligator will eat me last type of strategy.
Yeah, but he was really mad when Vosh told him that his dad was the Zodiac killer.
Yeah, he got really upset.
When Trump told, not Vosh.
No, he got when I yeah
Vosh
he got
did
really
tell him
mad
that his dad was the Zodiac killer. Yeah, he was
about
mad.
that.
Okay. Next quote is, "It's not conscionable to tell young people who came here as children that they have to go back to a country they don't know."
I'm gonna say Democrat, maybe.
Well, this is in reference to
DACA.
DACA, yeah. So
yeah, yeah.
I mean, this has to be Obama.
Obama.
Okay, Vosh is going Obama. John.
So strategically, I should just guess whatever about. No, should just guess whatever he guesses, so I don't fall further behind.
I have no idea. I have
no.
Then you can't win.
I'm gonna trust the gut. I'm gonna go. Somebody else guessed before me. I gotta think about this more.
I have no idea.
I'll guess Biden. Why not?
Yeah, Biden already came up. Are there repeats?
Yeah, no. Yeah, I do think Obama's the best guess. I'm trying to think of like an old genteel Republican who might say that, but I don't think.
You were thinking of who would say unconscionable, or conscionable, right? Like only a few politicians would. Only the fancy pants ones. So we have to think.
Yeah. Like part of me wants to say Romney, but he ran against Obama, so it's hard for me to believe that he said that. So I'm gonna go.
Well,
Obama.
you gotta lock it in because it's.
No, I know. I locked it in at Obama. Yeah.
You locked it in Obama.
Yeah.
Bosch, who did you say it was? Obama as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is not conscionable
McCain.
to tell young people who came here as children that they have to go back to a country that they don't know. And by the way, there's 900 of these dreamers that are serving in uniform in the United States military.
Mr. McCain, welcome to the resistance. I forgot about his positions on this.
I was right for genteel R, but sadness. It's okay.
Next
Still a
one.
point.
There's no question that President Trump is practically and morally responsible for provoking the events of the day. There's no question about it.
This was really recent.
Liz Cheney? I have no idea.
I think is Bill Barr an option? I say Bill Barr.
Oh, Bill Barr. Yeah, he's not really a politician.
Does he count as a politician, Don?
No, he does not. I did not. No, it's not Bill Barr.
Okay, damn. I'm gonna go Republican. I'm gonna say Chris Christie.
Okay, Republican Chris Christie.
I already made a mistake on Christie, so I'm gonna say McConnell.
Hedging my bets. I'm gonna go with McConnell. Vosh has been right too many times.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and see.
I must bow. I am not as terminally online.
There's no question.
Yes.
Done.
Hedge my bet.
It's a safe bet.
Morally responsible.
And morally responsible for provoking the events of the day.
I remembered him saying
No
this.
question
That's
about
the
it.
question. Yeah.
I am a turtle.
Well,
Cocaine.
he's dead now, is the thing.
Is he dead? He didn't die.
Yeah, he died.
he's
Yeah.
just-
McConnell is dead?
Yeah. He
Are we
froze.
sure?
Right? Yeah,
Is this-
right there.
This
And that was
information-
it.
No, I mean I know he froze, but I didn't know he passed away. Did he actually pass away?
Yeah, he never unfroze.
I see. Windows 98 strikes again.
Yeah, they haven't found a way to
Boss, we should cancel you for spreading misinformation.
kick him back. What? I haven't seen it. Listen, okay? I believe what I see, and I haven't seen him since the freezing, so...
It's possible.
We don't know.
No, cocaine Mitch is immortal. You can't die.
Well, Vosh, you just won a T-shirt. So
Holy
we're gonna
shit.
send
Hell
you one.
yes. It was
Yes.
faded.
It was faded. It was faded.
I'll give you my P.O. Box info.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, send us our PO box.
Absolutely.
But I think this highlights. I try to pick specific examples that show about how just in the past 8 to 10 years, such massive leaps have changed in the way in which specific politicians talk about their rivals or even the things that they care about. Like the Republican Party has moved so far away from even thinking about DACA. Democrats are completely for gay marriage, and they don't even talk about this idea of like being in debt to China. A lot of it comes out of, so we talk about them being greedy or they're being corrupt. What do you think that this is happening, Vosh?
Why do I think,
other than just money?
Why do I think they're greedy and corrupt?
Other than just greed and corruption, like they are also getting elected on these talking points. How is it happening that within the span of 8 years, a population is unable to recognize that these politicians are full of shit?
Well, I mean, discounting the fact that people are capable of changing their minds on stuff, I think that, like, most people have a pretty Machiavellian attitude when it comes to the perspectives of the politicians they vote for. Personally, I don't give a shit whether or not Joe Biden, like, actually personally cares about gay people. I only care if that's going to be, like, a part of his political bloc. I think most people understand that politicians are mostly in it to rep, like, personal and party interests, and the positions they take tend to be, if not insincere, at the very least, like, taking second billing. So I think it's not so much a matter of corruption. I think a lot of it is just, you know, like I said before, responsiveness to bourgeois interests. A lot of the stuff politicians do doesn't really make sense from our perspective. Like, for instance, Joe Biden acknowledges the existence and threat of climate change, but then signs off 1 billion fracking, you know, permission, like, slips or whatever. And that doesn't make much sense. And then you realize, like, okay, well, why did that happen? Well, a lot of this happened because of the Ukraine war, like it's been ramping up lately. And we're trying to foster, like, energy independence because we've been reliant on Russia and the Saudis, and for, like, increasingly severe geopolitical reasons, we can't keep doing that. And then it's like, well, it's not good, but there's a reason for it, you know? But what are those interests? I think for a lot of the politicians, the interests really are as obviously evil as they're pals with the wealthy people, and the wealthy people want different shit. And then sometimes it's a bit more complicated. For instance, with the gay stuff, like Joe Biden switching his mind, I don't really know if he personally has changed his mind. My personal guess is that Joe Biden is like one of those keep it to yourself, do it in the bedroom, kind of like mildly problematic religious homophobe types. And
he's in his mid-80s.
Yeah, he's in his he's ancient, you know. And I my guess is that he's not, like, he was asked like how many genders are there, and he's like smiles at least 3. I don't think he cares that much. I think he recognizes that it's like a big culture war thing right now, but I don't think it's like an animating force with him. So he'll just adopt whatever position is most politically beneficial.
Just a bit of superficiality and like people pleasing kind of thing, right?
That's fine for me. Like, as speaking as like a gay person or whatever, I do not
me too
care if he likes gay people. I'm totally fine with him being like kind of cavalier and indifferent as long as he's there on the public issues. I don't need him to be like some kind of crazy far left queer ally.
I agree with you on that.
Yeah. It's just about what he can do.
Yeah, because I'm gay and I don't care if he's terribly interested in my, you know, in what my moral values are and everything. But as long as, well, it just depends. I'm not going to make any statements on Joe Biden.
Wait, how many gay or bi people do we have on the stage? Because I'm gay too.
All of them.
Like, that's a lot of gay people. John, are you the only straight one at this point?
I'm straight. I'm not gay.
Yeah, John's the only straight one. Yeah.
Too bad, Don.
Yeah, tough
Don
titties.
always
You know?
vibes.
Tough titties. And he keeps on disconnected. I
mean, part of my answer is I think that politicians have changed their minds so much. I mean, I think that part of it is, invested interests and elites. But I think that those interests are also coming from a different place of just rapid polarization in terms of just basic values. Like America barely agrees on anything anymore, and that seems to have sped up over the last decade and a half in a pretty serious way. And like, I'm not saying that like rich people don't have interests, but I also think that there's more to it. Because it's not just rich people who I disagree with vehemently. There's also I disagree with you vehemently on many things, for example. And I find on not just on like policy, on like economic stuff, but I disagree with people all around me all the time on like the most basic values. And I think that that's something that is rapidly accelerated recently. The reasons for that are very interesting and complicated, and I don't really know all the reasons, but I do think that, like, not to be like a cliche conservative here, but like the fraying of the social fabric is very real, and I think that has a lot to do with it.
I think it comes down to bourgeois interests perfectly, actually, because like 30 years ago, I think most Americans were what we would today call kind of indifferent to lightly homophobic when it comes to like gay or queer issues.
Yes.
But a small portion of people being militant on either side. And now the number of people who are indifferent is very small, and people are militant on either side. And that is 100% due to a completely artificial culture war started by the GOP when they started rambling about trans people in bathrooms. And the reason they did that,
you think that's what started it?
The modern, like, current culture war on queer people thing, yeah, because they lost the gay marriage issue with Obergefell in 2015. So in 2016,
why wasn't that the first shot?
Huh?
Why? So I'm just curious.
Because the American zeitgeist has moved towards accepting homosexuality. It's on TV. It's everywhere. It was completely accepted.
Right, but Vosh, the question for you is, why do you feel like as you say, it was like very militant minorities on both sides? I appreciate the consistent grooming, by the way. It's lovely.
Yeah, my mustache hairs are tickling the out of my face right now. It's so annoying.
No, it's all good. I love it.
But why? I agree that most people were indifferent, and there's like militant side fringes, which is kind of how all politics was for a very long time, is fighting over indifferent middle. But why would you say that the beginning of the artificial culture war happened with the GOP's pushback or push, let's say, to keep the language neutral, as opposed to Obergefell or something like that? Why do you put the starting gun there?
Because well, for one, we know objectively that they were lying. In fact, documents have already leaked, like emails behind the scenes, where it's very clear that a number of Republican politicians, leaders, and strategists were like making stuff up or deliberately over-exaggerating stuff, and that they were aware that they were doing it. The thing is, it's like abortion for the GOP. The GOP politicians don't give a shit about abortion. They rape and they have mistresses and they get their abortions quietly. They personally, they don't care. But they use it as like a stick with a carrot at the end to try to move people to support other policies that would otherwise be a tough pill to swallow. Pro-corporate policies, mostly. Really tough to get like a significant number of people voting for you when your promises make the wealthy wealthier. So you can try to like smooth that over with narratives about how like trickle-down economics works, which it doesn't. It's provably not working. But a more effective way is to go, oh, okay, well, let's not even talk about the economic issues. Let's talk about the real crisis facing America, immigration or gay marriage or this or that. And the culture war has always been a way of distracting from the real positions of the party. Though I think recently the positions of the party have shifted to the point where like they actually are number one, like transgenocide, and the economic stuff is second fiddle. Like, I think if you asked Marjorie Taylor Greene, like if you could like read her brain or whatever, what does she really give a shit about? I don't really think it'd be like tax policy, I think she just wants gay people dead, and the other stuff is just kind of part of the package.
You really think that?
I mean, she's advertising. I'm sorry, John.
Is that exact? I'm trying to tell if that's like exaggeration or
no. I think they do. I think that most Republican politicians and strategists either actively want queer people dead or are okay with them being dead if it serves their political interests. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, she's advertising to the people that like that kind of shit. You know what I mean? She's advertising herself as someone who likes guns and all the silly shit that she said. I mean, that's
is a real woman. She's a real woman as opposed to a fake woman.
Yeah,
but
she's saying all that to
I'm still not sure why you think it's artificial though, because
we know they were lying. We literally have leaked documents.
Right, but that doesn't mean that people don't actually really truly disagree about these
John, do you know about like the hack app and how Fox News has utilized this hack app where they do
no,
some people are worried about they'll put out things like some people are worried about X, or a lot of people are talking about Y. These are things that you can't even prove, but we can see that like uproar around CRT and uproar around trans people. You can literally look at like Google Trends and Google searches are literally related to what did Tucker Carlson have on the news the night before. Like these issues are manufactured, right? CRT until Chris Rufo came on Fox News wasn't even talked about. It wasn't even in like
the CRT thing was so transparent. Yeah, it was like the greatest threat to America. But then they realized they would get they got like more consistent pull if they just focused on the like trans teachers are grooming your kids. So they completely backed off the CRT. Like the spike on Google Trends. It's literally like it's like a needle shooting upwards.
Kind of looks like the GameStop stock market thing. It just looks like it's the same.
Yeah, they shorted critical race theory. Some people made big money on that.
Again, I'm not sure that selective media coverage necessarily makes the underlying reality not there. Like I'm not
there is no underlying reality. They made it up. The CRT thing was fake.
Right, so you'd have to demonstrate that to me. But
I mean, just like litter boxes in schools was fake, or just like teachers giving your kids like gender affirming care without parents' permission, like that never happens.
Really? You think that's fake?
Yes, I'm almost sure that's fake.
I literally went to a school where the policy was that you don't tell the parents.
That's fine. Yeah, teachers aren't obligated to tell parents everything.
Right. Okay. So now that's my question, because I would say that it's not artificial that half of the parents in the country think that's incredibly bad. Like that's not artificial.
Yeah, just because parents want to have authoritarian control over their children's life doesn't mean that the school has to agree to it. Right? There's tons of parents
but that's not what I'm not arguing on the merits right now. I'm arguing that the value differences aren't just purely manufactured and purely artificial. I feel like the value differences are real.
Where did the paranoia of teachers not telling parents that about pronouns used at school, like where did that come from? The problem is like people will be concerned about what they're told to be concerned about. So if you have institutions like Fox News that are getting them concerned over meaningless and like insignificant bullshit, then it doesn't really matter if they're actually bothered by it because their concern is fake.
Hold on. You're saying it's meaningless and insignificant.
I am.
Again, they don't necessarily think that.
I don't. Wait,
manufactured because they dared to bring it to the attention of people who would care.
But I don't care about what they think. Is the thing. It's
right, but I'm not challenging you on the merits. I'm challenging you on the artificiality. If they really do care, if it really is what they think, it's not artificial because Fox News decided to bring it to their attention.
No. By artificial, what we mean is that these are not concerns that arose from lived experience or from an actual awareness of reality, but rather they were told to be paranoid about it by media institutions who benefit from it. So a good example would be like the Y2K bug. The Y2K bug was a panic that was largely non-manufactured. It was fake, but people sincerely worried about it because people are idiots and they fall for shit. And like there were some tabloids pushing it, but it wasn't like there was a big media conspiracy to make people think Y2K was real. But then you have shit where like there's very obviously like the litter boxes in schools thing, which never happened and is fake. But people are genuinely concerned about it as a product of like a deliberate effort to make people worried about it. Like it's the artificiality of what information's being delivered to them.
First of all, I don't know anything about the litter box thing, to be honest with you. And I also don't think that the Y2K thing is super relevant because Y2K wasn't real and was never real. 2000 was never going to be the apocalypse. That was never going to be a thing. And you're saying that Fox News made them care about it? I'm not convinced that that's true. From my read, I think that Fox News and these corporate interests had an interest in driving up their numbers, and like all corporate news has an interest in, the panic clicks and all that stuff, and that's very true. But I'm not convinced. I feel like you're reversing the order of operations here when we're not sure we have to. I think that they just didn't know because it was an under the radar policy, and then Fox
it's not an under the radar. Wait. But even your framing. Wait. But even your framing is wrong. It wasn't an under-the-radar policy. There is nothing that obligates a teacher to tell parents everything a student says to them at school. Like, even your framing there, like, under-the-table policy, it's not like a secret that was kept. This has been the case for the history of all education. You could go back to, like, 1723, and back then it also still was not the policy for teachers to tell the parents everything that was said to them.
But only now are we in a cultural context where this particular result of that policy could have this effect.
It's
and
not even a policy. It's just it's the absence of a policy.
Whatever. You know what I'm saying. And you're telling me that Fox News is bad because they told parents, "Hey, guess what? This is a thing now." And I'm not convinced that Fox News like made them paranoid. I think that, as you say, it didn't happen from lived experience.
Let Don get in here, guys.
Their attention,
This would be like if there was
artificial.
like out of nowhere a million media segments saying that Walmart has a new policy where if your kid goes up to a Walmart worker and says, "Hey, I'm trans actually, can you call me by these pronouns?" and the Walmart worker says, "Sure, okay," the Walmart worker doesn't have to tell the parents. It would be like, it is that level of dumb times 10. And then everyone is like, "Oh my God, why does Walmart have this policy that allows them to trans your children?" Like, this is like fear-mongering hysteria is the problem. Like, this doesn't track onto reality at all.
We can look at like just numbers. Last year, how many children received like any type of surgery for gender affirming care? And kids is people under the age of 18, right? How many that? It was like 253 from the last thing I saw.
Yeah.
And this is already after Fox News made it like a national issue. These numbers are so insignificant that if it wasn't for the hyperfixation of media, you would expect it to not even be within the purview of the people watching or even the purview of the voters. In the same way that critical race theory wasn't an organically emerging issues that parents cared about the fact that their kids are learning that slavery was bad and didn't have benefits in school, that they got an uproar and like they elected politicians who cared about it. It's the same type of maneuver. The same type of political maneuver.
Well,
I don't see why that seems so far-fetched.
I would just ask, because we can distill this, right, by analogizing it. It's a fact that immigrants commit less crime than native citizens on average.
Yes.
So if we've had immigrants for decades and centuries in this country, if there was like out of nowhere this like sudden push by a bunch of conservative media institutions to hype up the danger of immigration, and a bunch of people started sincerely getting like paranoid and fearful about it, I think we could fairly call it like artificial, because even though immigrants do commit crime, every group does, and even though some crimes that would have been listed in those segments would have actually happened, so those individual elements are truthful, the overall social panic is both unsubstantiated empirically and also like completely artificial, because it was done to their benefit, you know, like they just wanted to push that narrative. I mean, how else would we know when anything is true if news organizations can just manufacture any narrative and then post hoc justify the legitimacy of their coverage by pointing to all the people they riled up?
I mean, all these media companies, and Fox News included, exacerbate the problem of culture war fever, you know?
I mean, I would say that it's not particularly analogous because, again, the underlying reality of immigrants not committing as many crimes as natives, I think a more accurate thing would say, let's pretend in an alternate reality just for a second. A more apt analogy would be immigrants commit slightly more crimes than natives. And people, especially in, let's say, certain areas. And people aren't really aware of this because it's somewhat small. But then all of a sudden, the news starts to talk about it, and maybe it's an art for various motives. And then people say, hey, because they commit more crimes, I think that maybe we should have a different immigration policy, even if it's only slight, even if it's only a little bit, and even if it's been true for a long time.
If things were different, John, things would be different.
That you are upset because the news noticed and told people, and then they started to notice. Like, why?
What did they notice?
No, but I don't think you're well established to argue about impartiality in media when you refer to this as a policy. Like, again, the teachers not telling the parents of students about the students saying that they're trans or want different pronouns in class. This is as relevant and as meaningful as saying Walmart employees will use the pronouns they're asked to.
True,
no, it
interact with your teacher every day.
It doesn't matter. No one
primary social environment.
These one has ever. It doesn't.
Comparable situations.
No one has ever fronted the idea that teachers have to disclose this information to parents. And the idea that they should have to just because some trans people exist is ludicrous. We're literally like imposing this first of all, I would argue it's a pro-grooming belief, because the people most likely to groom children are the family or people directly adjacent to the family, not teachers, not even close. So I think that by like so many instances of sexual and physical abuse are found out because students disclose it to teachers. And I think that environment of comfort is really, really important, because the social narrative that teachers are all like gunning for the opportunity to trans children is completely nonsense, you know? So this fear-mongering is basically just the hysteria of conservative parents who don't want anyone to have any control over their kid but them. But their kid is their own person, and they have a right to use different
I don't agree with this.
But I want to add that a teacher's job is not to report to parents. If a child or a student comes to a teacher with a problem that they have or an issue that they're facing, and that's something that the teacher feels is necessary, because teachers are mandatory reporters for abuse, they feel that they refer to a counselor or they refer to the school psychologist to go ahead and help that kid do what they need to do or deal with the issues they have to deal. The teacher, that's not what's happening here. Like we talked about the numbers of how many trans kids are actually getting like surgeries, under the age of 18, and whatever those numbers are, it's about 200 something in the last year. And then we look at the fact that immigrants aren't committing higher crimes. Right? So like your analogy is, if the world was different, then the world would be different.
That's not what I
but
said.
It's not different, right? If the news reported on the fact that for example, does Fox News?
I was making the analogy more accurate. That's all.
Yeah, but the analogy is, if things are different, then things are different. But things aren't different. Fox News lies. They literally lied about CRT, and they lied about the trans problem, and they lied about the fact that immigrants are more criminal. Like, these are all lies.
Mm-hmm.
Can you not see that?
They did get sued by Dominion for
massively depends on the case, and I'd have to look into it. So I think we can end the segment here. Here's what I'll say. I think that the primary fundamental disagreement is about parental authority. I think, unlike every other person in this room, I think that teachers are mandated that parental authority supersedes government authority. And when it comes to their children, in almost every case, and if a teacher experiences or notices a developmental feature or development in a child that is of sufficient significance, they do have an obligation to report it to the parents, because the kid fundamentally falls under the authority of the parents, not the government.
No, but wait, but you're conflating something.
I realize that it's incredibly rare now, but the second that parents realize, oh, this is actually possible, and we're actually in a cultural moment where this might tend to happen.
You're already conflating.
Right, it doesn't happen a lot, but now they're kicking back to make sure it doesn't happen at all.
So again, a couple of things. First of all, you're conflating. There is no governmental authority here. Nobody's arguing that parents have to disclose this to teachers. It's not an expression of governmental authority for a teacher to listen to a student talk to them.
Not disclose to parents?
No. It is not governmental authority to just not have to disclose everything to parents. Children aren't objects.
Well, then parental authority should be large enough to create that mandate.
No, I think, respectfully, I think that's genuinely psychotic and like groomer talk. I think that's like
really, it's psychotic that if a kid has
like everything that a kid says that could be relevant to their personality development or their identity has to be reported back to their potentially abusive parents. If they're telling this shit to the teacher but not the parent. Wait. If they're telling this to the teacher but not their parents, it's a pretty strong indication of how they feel about their parents and the likelihood of those parents taking them seriously, right?
Okay, so this is really the divide. You think that are you of the opinion that any parent who would opt for like watchful waiting as opposed to absolute affirmation qualifies as abusive?
Yes, easily.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is our fundamental value disagreement because
it's an empirical one. It's an empirical one. I'm only citing standard medical practice.
Yeah. Well,
if a kid says
medical ethics around this issue are not something.
If a kid says like I would like to go by she, her, or he, him pronouns or whatever else, I'm not saying you have to run out to the store and buy them a dick or whatever. You can talk about it with them and work it out. But
soon, the slope will happen. Guaranteed.
No. The slippery slope is literally called a fallacy.
Yeah, it is a fallacy.
No, but like just like shrugging and pointing to slippery slope. They said this about gay people. They said, oh well, first it's gay people, then it's marrying like dogs.
Then it's pedophiles. Then it's blah blah blah. Yep.
Yeah, you got to be really careful about that, because that's always, it's always like, well, sure, there's no harm now, but down the future. But the future doesn't
Well, the funny
happen.
thing is that after Obergefell, we did have hyper-normalization. Even you've gone against kink in pride parades. I know that you have.
First of all, kink in pride parades has been a thing for as long as pride parades have been. And also, that's fine. I don't think it should be illegal for people to do kink at pride.
No, not illegal, but people noticing that cultural normalization does result in actual normalization over time.
I would take gay people being cringe at pride parades over them being beaten and arrested at their pride parades any day.
Well, of course, but I don't think
One second.
Yeah, it's when you argue
here.
about the consequences of normalization, that is what you're arguing against. Yeah, it's that is the dynamic. It's gay people being loud and cringe, or it's gay people being beaten and arrested.
I do not accept this false binary.
That is that is literally the line on legalization.
I want to get in here on something because I just want to point something out, John. Doesn't it seem like the safety of the kid is always but come first, right? Like
Correct,
the government can take the child away if the parents are, like, for instance, abusive. Surely you agree that that's a good thing.
I agree.
Right?
The difference is what we define as abusive.
Wait, no.
Yeah,
The
well,
difference
I mean,
is, wait,
gay
one
and
second. No,
trans kids.
the difference is who
going
do we,
home after. Dude, can I get in? I'm sorry.
No,
Gay and trans
kids.
Gay and trans kids do get abused by their parents when, say, for instance, if teachers are required to disclose this information, that will be a thing that you're going to have to ethically deal with in your own camp, right? That's something that's going to happen.
Like, if you want to, I would be open to a policy where, let's say, the kid doesn't want to tell the parents, and if the kid first of all, if the kid like reports like physical abuse or like a fear of physical abuse, then that's something else. But if they just say, oh, my parents don't really believe in that stuff, I'm totally still cool with, like, maybe watching the parents to make sure they don't physically beat the kid. But if the parents just, like,
how would we monitor that? How would that logistically? I don't see how that would even work.
What do you mean you don't see how that works?
Look, I decided to tell my parents I was gay. It didn't go well.
If they're actually being hit. But saying that, like, parents who take a watchful waiting strategy are outright abusive is like it's an insane position.
Well, I think it's insane. Well, it's bad for the parents to do that, sure, but I think it's even worse to deny the child spaces of comfort where they can acknowledge and have their identity acknowledged by other people. Like, for instance, I think there's lots of shitty things that a parent can do that are pretty abusive but aren't, like, illegal. Like, there are lots of things. There are lots of bad parents out there. But normally what you can say is, like, okay, so maybe the parents are shit, but there are still, like, friends that you can go to, there's, like, maybe your parents are homophobic. That's not illegal. But if you've got, like, a gay 13-year-old kid or something, then one of the best things that you can do for a person in that position is give them a space where they can, like, comfortably assert their identity without judgment,
By the way, this conversation kind of implies of what I said about a fundamental value disagreement of so I just want to point that out.
Would you agree that corporal punishment is a form of abuse?
In almost all cases, yeah. I mean, like, I was spanked a little bit as a kid. I was abused, but, like, generally, sure.
Sure. How did society, what were the mechanisms that allowed us to understand and develop the knowledge that corporal punishment is abuse?
Psychology.
Sure. Yeah, it was right. Okay. So is you're telling me?
No. 1 second. Instead of going, follow me along. What are the mechanisms today that we still rely on to let us know whether behaviors by adults are abusive to children?
It's the same institutions, but the institutions have been changed in multiple ways since then. And even if they hadn't, being correct once doesn't mean that you're correct the second time. This point
how have they changed?
And this is for me. When you talk about when you talk about the value difference, you do this like double-edged sword. You do this like, I'm on my way to the store to get a tinfoil hat because the institutions are, like, destroyed and commanded by, like, some leftist academics, while at the same time saying, well, really, it should be within the authoritarian hands of the parents to dictate the kid's life.
It's
because whether you like it or not, a child and a teenager developing needs to have people they can talk to. Without fear of it being reported to the parents, especially if they're afraid that what they're going to say is going to be rejected by their parents.
This kind of stuff is in scientific papers in psychological.
Yeah, that's what.
Children are not just the custodian. Their parents are not their only custodians. They're autonomous. They can make decisions about their life. You can't just force kids to live their life the way you want them to. The only time parents get but the only time you have to contact the parent when it's a legal matter, because it's up to the parents to make a legal decision. It's not always going to involve the parents, especially when they're 15, 16, 17.
Well, first of all, I do believe that kids have people to talk to other than their teachers. There are such things as, friends and family friends. All I'm saying is that if you are an agent of the state who is charged temporarily with care for a child, which is essentially on loan to you from the parents, because that's what a public school is, because they don't have to be at a public school, they could be at a private school, then you have an obligation to report significant developments in their development if those developments are significant enough. Yes, 100%. And I would say that equivocating like parental authority to being like just as authoritarian as that, I think that's insane. I think families are a fundamentally.
May I ask real quick,
I mean,
John,
we're kind of
who else would?
here, but so we can move on soon if you like, Don.
I wanted to ask you real quick, John.
Last question by Thomas, and we'll move on.
Yeah, who else can children tell about things than their teacher or their parents?
Friends, family.
No,
friends.
that can actually do something to help them.
What do you mean by help?
Like, as in, if the child is telling the teacher, I'm getting beat when I go home.
I mean, beat? They can tell teachers if they're getting beat. That's fine.
Okay. So the main issue here is with the trans thing then, right?
Yeah, because saying that, let's wait till you're 18 maybe, and then see if you still feel the same way before we start doing anything. And in the meantime, we can take alternate forms of care that Don and I have talked about, and that's a huge longer conversation. Yeah, I wouldn't exactly call that the
alternate forms of care?
This is another conversation. But
is it care that's like validated by the medical establishment, or is it like conversion therapy care?
Conversion therapy is like mandatory watching of a screen telling you you're wrong. No, of course not.
That's not what conversion therapy is, though. Conversion therapy.
That's what people think of when they hear conversion therapy.
No, conversion therapy camps. No, people don't have like an exaggerated belief about them. You usually go to these like Christian camps where they're like, "Hey, we're gonna learn ways to learn that you're actually not like that." Yeah, like pray the gay away shit. Would this all apply if a kid was gay? Like if they were like, my parents are horribly homophobic and I think I'm gay. Like if they told that to a parent, do you think, or to a teacher, do you think that would be like disclosure time?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I would be, if I could give you like a knee jerk opinion, but it wouldn't be thought out. So I try not to say.
I think we're massaging this point to like its death.
Yeah, I mean I agree. I think we've just gotten repetitive.
Yeah.
So I will say
what would persuade you, John? What would persuade you? Like let's say for instance, we tried this. We mandated that teachers have to inform the parents of this, and we find that there's a spike in abuse of these kind of children, deaths of these kind of children, those sorts of things. Would that persuade you that this was a bad decision?
Probably.
That's really concerning. Even if this produced more abuse and more death and more kids killing themselves over this, you would probably be convinced. I mean, I don't know how much more strict you get about it.
I can tell you why. I always say probably in these hypotheticals because there's a million other variables. There's other policies that we could put in place that would mitigate those specific consequences. We could do things. There's other things that could be done to mitigate those consequences. Now, to my mind, it's hard to think of an obvious one, so I'm going to say probably. I probably agree with you. But when it comes to hypotheticals like that, where there's so many other confounding variables involved, I'm not going to give you a definitive yes. Just because I say probably because I'm like 90% sure. But, there's always the 10% that you can figure out a way to mitigate those cases of abuse and stuff like that, and make sure that that kind of stuff doesn't happen. Because, of course, that's one of the deepest evils there is. So I realize that sounds bad at first blush, but really, I really am leaning.
If children feel they can't trust their parents, and then now you're just telling them now they can't trust the teachers either. Like I would imagine if I was in that position where I was questioning myself, wondering about what I was going to do, and then my options are I could tell my parents, might get beaten. Seriously, I'm in the Southeast. That's just what happens. Or I could tell my teacher, but my teacher might tell my parents. Well, who do I go to? What do I do then, John?
Well, the teachers and the state should figure out the likelihood of you actually being physically beaten. And unfortunately, it's hard for me to trust those mechanisms at the moment because I feel that they're ideologically captured in many ways. But in my ideal world, let's say that things work the way I want them to work, I think you'd be able to make a decent prediction as to whether or not the parents will be physically actually abusive as opposed to, this weird, vague, overly broad.
Mental abuse is still abuse. It's not
mental
like
abuse.
Right.
It's bad, man.
Again, we have different definitions of abuse on this, but for the definitions of abuse that we share, if you had Child Protective Services come in and they did an evaluation and they decided the likelihood of actual abuse, I would be cool with exceptions to the rule. But I think the general rule should be reporting. Yes.
Well, how on earth would you go about practically evaluating that? That doesn't make any sense.
I know we're going over. I know. I told you.
And then we're going to go back and say,
got some more stuff to do.
Let's I'm actually so annoyed about the internet issues, but that's okay. Things happen. People decide to hit transformers with their cars down the street.
Thank you, John, for being a trooper, man.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm the lone wolf.
I know you are. It's
fine.
okay.
I know. I lost my friend. I'm so sad about it. Sad.
So what when we talk about accountability and abuse and what is abuse, this is something that Jordan Peterson has gotten in trouble for, especially now that he's being and he said he's going to go to the mandatory trainings under CPO.
He's going to live stream it.
He's going to live stream it.
I can't wait. Yeah.
So let's start with Vash. Vash, what do you think it's going to be like? What do you think they're going to tell him? What do you think these mandatory trainings are going to be like?
It's probably going to be like a pretty boring corporate seminar. It's really funny that he's being held to this, but there's nothing they can do to change him. They really should just drop him from any kind of certification because he's a hack. The idea that he needs social media training is still like an implicit acknowledgement that he would be legitimate in his medical beliefs if he was just better about social media. But at this point, he should probably be, I don't know, sent out to pasture. He's old, he's insane. He was lobotomized by the Russians. I think that there's a nice farm upstate where, just send him upstate. I think it'd be better for him. This is just
back
sad.
to Alberta. Get him out of Ontario. Put him back in Alberta.
That's so funny.
Something like that.
I think that I think that one of the biggest issues, and I know a lot of people don't see that. They go, "Oh, what's the issue with what he was saying?" Well, a lot of it is that he's miscommunicating his credentials. I think on many accounts he has said that he's an evolutionary biologist. He has said that he is a neuroscientist, and that's just none of that is true.
He said he's an evolutionary biologist?
Yeah, he did on one of his shows.
Yeah,
an interview you had somewhere.
Okay.
I mean, I know what he meant, but that's just unbelievably irresponsible phrasing. I agree that was bad.
I know last week you and John, you and I got into it, and you said you wanted to say something back to rephrase.
Yeah, all I wanted to say is that if we find the live stream, and if Vosh is right, that's very boring and corporate. I mean, part of the reason why I have a problem with this is because it seems to be that they're not really defining what the re-education is going to look like, what standards there's going to be, like what criteria are to be met. It's all very vague and black boxy and subjective, so that's upsetting. But if it turns out that the meeting is really just them saying, hey, don't call yourself an evolutionary biologist, say you're trained in it maybe to some level, and hey, when you're saying that you believe that the psych institutions are wrong or the surgeons are wrong, you have to say it in a way that's not so denigrating or that's not so like if they really take like that very
that's social media training, honestly. So
well, sure, if that's actually what it is, then I think Peterson's overreacting, but I kind of doubt it. I kind of doubt it's going to be that genteel and minorly.
They have to make him woke. That's what I want.
It'd be really funny. Like here's the thing. That is the most entertaining option. The most entertaining option is them trying to make him woke on live stream and Peterson arguing.
No, I disagree. I think the most entertaining option is seeing Peterson sweat as they're like, well, hello, class. Remember, when you go on social media, you have to represent yourself as a professional. Right, like if that's going to be funny.
The most entertaining is being put out to pasture. I'm sorry.
That is true. That is true. That would be the most entertaining.
That's not entertaining. That's like a bittersweet fairy tale ending. That's not funny.
Well, bitter
that's
for some.
He
can eat grass all he wants to.
Of the U.S. of the U.S. America.
He probably experienced brain death a while ago. Okay, I don't know.
We need Kermit. We need a Canadian Kermit like arguing with like his like woke.
I don't know.
On live stream, I want to see it. That's the funniest option. So I don't know. Like, I think that a lot of it's kind of dodgy and like I don't really trust a lot of it. But it all does kind of depend on what the re-education actually looks like. So until then, we'll see. I have very large doubts, but we will see. Yeah.
I think we're really getting towards the end of the show. It's only through 90 minutes.
Goodness,
and we're really like 4 minutes.
Having fun.
Yeah, it does fly. It does fly.
Yeah, this has been great.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. So one of the things that I know that like, watching some of your streams, people always put you in the camp on the left with the Democrats. What do you think is one of the things that Democrats do the worst? and like have fucked up the country the most with.
In a way Democrats are so bad at populist messaging. They're insanely bad at it.
Yes.
The problem is that like the Democrats as a whole, broadly, on average, are led by a bunch of 1990s Clintonite neoliberals. These are arrogant people who came to political prominence during a time when there was no meaningful, well, not no meaningful, but not many significant differences between the two parties. Every time they publicly disagreed, they would all go out and do the same like golf course together. Like there was no real like beating heart disagreement. And as a product of that, you know, I think that the Democrats are really bad at understanding like the state of affairs. Even people like Biden, who has changed a lot in the past couple decades and has been at times quite aggressive in ways that I definitely approve
racial
of.
super predator.
Yeah, he's come a while since then, that's for sure. I think, but even with people like him, the problem is I don't want Democrats to be like kind and civil. I don't want Democrats to be like, oh, here's the better reasonable option. I don't know why none of them called Donald Trump a pedophile. He's literally a friend of Epstein. This is a self-admitted mutual friendship that both of them bragged about up through years and years of mutual acquaintanceship. Like,
yeah, doesn't he all like have 21 allegations of assault also?
Yeah, like, and since they're all like, this narcissist, this uncivil man, call him a pedophile. Why not?
Well, don't you think that doing that would just exacerbate some of the partisanship that we're seeing in the country? Isn't like, as a politician or someone who's like, if you were in a position of government, wouldn't one of the things that you would try to do is have the country not fall apart?
I think the problem is that I think that people who support Trump are orcs, and I think that they respond to strength more than anything. If they responded if they responded to civility, they would have gone with Ted Cruz, not with Donald Trump. So Democrats being civil doesn't win them over. Democrats being civil makes them think that we're being smug. I think that the best thing that we can do is demonstrate that we have the strength and conviction to lead the country, because that's what sold them on Trump. Not Trump being civil, because of course he's not, right? But rather Trump indicating that he was above this civility politics bullshit, which the Democrats need to do this. Even the Justice Dems are bad about this. They still have to play ball. Yeah. You know, you have like AOC sobbing as she votes for the Israel nuclear dome so that if a Palestinian child gets within like 10 miles of the Capitol, they get vaporized after having a talk with Nancy Pelosi. Like, there's so much shit the Dems try to do to keep it all under wraps, and I don't want it to be under wraps. I want it all to explode.
How do you toe the line then, right, between like a politician who's actually good at piloting the ship, but he's also a sophist. He's also a great carpet salesman, right? From like Plato's allegory, Socrates, like
that's the trick.
Allegory.
The GOP ran into this problem too, because Trump wasn't very good at piloting the ship, but he did the sophistry.
I mean, yeah, and this is why we had 1 million people die.
Like basically, what you said, Vosh, about what you want out of the new Democratic Party, and then Don saying, "What if we overcorrect to people who aren't very good at running things?" That's basically what the GOP did with Trump.
That is true. They fell towards fascism, right? The fascism has been latent for a while, and then with people like the MAGA hats, they're very overt with it. And of course, fascists are bad at governance. They're very bad at it. So, you know, the neocons are great at governance. They're very competent, but they're also not capable of hitting those same populist messages, because the most they can do to win public support is by appealing to things like racism, but without fully committing to it. I mean, what are you even doing, right? I think the best thing that we can do is to acknowledge the fact that like fervent populist left advocacy does not need to come at the cost of competence. It's possible, like Bernie Sanders, for example, very civil guy, very civil. Like, you know, he wasn't even on the Dem stage. He wasn't going that hard against other people. But there was
kneecapped by the DNC.
Right, but there was a kind of fire to the way he talked, an indication that he wasn't part of the regular rigmarole. And whether or not you get there by calling Donald Trump a pedophile, which he is, and I think that's a fair statement, or get there with this, like, you know, us, the 99% against the, like, however you get there, if you get there, if the Democrats could do that, they would win every federal election from now on. Like, they would never lose the presidency again. It would be over.
I think what would happen pretty quickly is everyone would just start calling each other pedophiles even harder.
Oh, because the right doesn't currently do that already. You know, the right has that's the civility politics game where it's like if you go low, they'll go lower.
Political partisanship.
They already go really low though, and I don't think it's going low to call DJ a pedophile though. Like, really, friend of Epstein.
I mean,
like,
no,
I think that's fair game.
Donald Trump
was an influential guy. Not everybody. Like I am.
No, but like for this, the same way anyone on the right criticizes the Clintonites and Epstein and makes that connection, every single picture where Hillary Clinton is hugging Jeffrey Epstein, Donald Trump is there too, right? So like we have to recognize that Donald Trump is a real estate mogul in New York, where the Clintons are from, right? Tied all the way back to Tammany Hall. Like this is corruption all the way down. And while it's right that they are also, Trump is a pedophile. Again, I think that I do worry that once you create that, like, oh, we're going to win not because we're going to fix gerrymandering or not because we're going to create voter enfranchisement because this country is overwhelmingly Democrat and we stop the cracking of districts of communities, are we going to be able then, like once Democrats take control and do this like populist messaging, going to be able to therefore stop that organization
I'm
from
saying
reverting into fascism itself?
Lean into both. Like there's no reason. That's the thing. That's the dynamic. They don't have to be separate. You don't have to be. It's not a balance of like civility and competence versus incompetence and uncivility. You can pick and choose. Fascists are uncivil and incompetent. Neoliberals are civil and competent. But I think that populist left-leaning people can be both uncivil and very competent. And the incivility is always a means to an end, right? There's no actual political gain to saying that Donald Trump is a pedophile unless it moves people over. But I think that appeal to strength is big. Like the right, there are lots of people on the right who will vote for Trump, but who don't really like him that much. The polling indicates this, his approval rating is pretty low with the country generally, but even within the Republican Party, it's about 50-50 on whether they're hardline Trumpers or just people who are going to side with him because DeSantis fell through and like Chris Christie's a lunatic. Like it's so there is like a fracture here.
Doug Burgum personally. I'm a Doug Burgum Republican.
Well, probably not going to win in 2024. I'm sorry to say. I know. Hey, maybe 2028. Whatever the case is, there are people who can be reached. And I think that a big part of like what we have to understand is, this is largely an urban-rural divide, and that shows itself in every like demographic polling bit we've done.
Yes.
Within a state by county levels. You can literally look at like a U.S. map from space and see which areas are cities and which aren't based on who voted red or blue. A lot of this is like the imagined liberal coastal elite versus like good old home, salt to the earth, rural American Republican. And I think that dynamic is bullshit because wealthy people are more likely to vote Republican. It's actually the opposite. Like coastal elites, that's Donald Trump. But as long as people believe that, all the liberal incivility in the world isn't going to move them over. I think we need to we need to find that balance. There needs to be more rhetorical fluidity. But the Dems are very consistent. That's why I get excited when I see even like little stuff like AOC doing her little Instagram stories. Like even that is a huge departure from what's normally a very hegemonic approach towards outreach.
Should we use the same approach that corporations take for what we call in the private sector marketing, in the political sector is propaganda? Should we take that same approach, that same marketing approach that academics learn when they go to universities, and employ that within democratic measures and democratic governance?
No, I don't think so. I think that's part of the problem. The Democrats listen to their strategists. Trump didn't. Yeah. Like Trump didn't just go with what a bunch of GOP strategists wanted him to do. He ignored them and ended up doing much better than anyone expected.
And I think part of the reason why I think DeSantis is failing is because he's listening to a strategist.
Agreed.
Too much. He comes off so artificial. Yes. Like, just give me grumpy, onerous Ron. Like it's gonna work better than and obviously like perform and like obviously memorize like stingers on the debate stage. It's artificiality is something that's really easy to see and that everybody hates. He needs to ignore it.
People want authenticity. People are like screaming for it. Joe Biden's pretty okay for this. Obama wasn't. Obama is incredibly smart and well-spoken and just like ungodly charismatic, but holy shit, is that dude like clear? Like for a fact that when that guy is like engaging with the common man, he's internally seething that an elite like him would have to like deign.
You think so?
The vibes I get from him are like contemptuously elitist. I like to a psychopathic degree. It's all Patrick Bateman shit up in here.
I actually feel that's why I said aloof. I actually feel as though he is kind of like you described because I've seen interactions with him and people before. That's
like Homelander, yeah. But Joe Biden, not Joe Biden. I legitimately think that if you saw Joe Biden at like a cafe or something and you were like, oh, hey, Joe, he'd be like, hey, yeah. Like, I like genuinely think that he's got like the actual old man friendly vibe.
It could be that Joe Biden is that much more authentic just because he's older and he's just like, I don't give as much of a fuck as I used to give.
I kind of agree.
Maybe he's changed his policies so much because this is just a charitable reading that he's become a better man as he's gotten older, or, you know, dropped the whole gay thing. I don't know. That's just an argument that might be able to be made.
No, I think I agree. Yeah, maybe he's just really leaning into like the old man don't give a fuck energy, which again,
it's
like
weird.
I'll just let my advisor.
Kind of cute. You know?
It is cute. It is cute. I think you know when two young people, when young people look at old people, go, oh, they're cute. Biden is that cute guy. You know, he puts his glasses on, he eats his ice cream, he falls off his bike and
loves
gets
with his Corvette Stingray.
Yeah.
Personally, I have nightmares about Dark Brandon. Personally,
do you? Yeah, I'm sure.
I do like that. It's a stupid meme, but playing into like stupid mimetic energy energizes people in a way Democrats don't get. Democrats still seem to think like people will get excited about like oh, here's my proposal for like a Pell Grant. Here's my like 12-step means tested look at how much better the economy will be. Dude, Americans don't give a shit about the economy. The average American,
learn through mimetics, just like you said.
Yeah, the average American has the intelligence of like a sea cucumber. They're nothing, okay? You give people narratives. Do good, don't get me wrong, do good policy-wise, but you have to give people a narrative to sell it. Not just like, you know, oh, here are some numbers that show things have gone up.
Well, I think that a lot of politicians get caught in like the local, county-wide, statewide elections where it seems that, you know, GOTV network and following your advisors works. But when they do get to the federal stage and all of a sudden the eyes of the nation are on them, that contrivedness kind of starts disappearing, right? Because like, on local elections, like when was the last time anyone were listening voted in their county election? Right, 10%, 9% of people do that overall, whereas for the federal election, it's 50%. So within those standards, it could be that listening to your advisors actually works. And once you start getting into the federal elections, it starts kind of falling apart. As Vosh is saying, you got to move them, you got to move their hearts.
Yeah, well, it's like anything. It's that your advisors are going to be right a lot of the time, but you have to know when they're not right, and you have to be willing to do the right thing instead. It's just there's a level of like political intuition. Like, say what you want about Trump, but that guy's political. I mean, he was a reality TV star forever. Like, he just knows how to play to a crowd and knows how to play to a camera.
Mm-hmm. He knows how to make a lot of fake stuff too.
And he's also a walking meme. Like, he didn't even have to try. Like, he just.
When
you're that the political intuition may work in some environments, but not in others. Like the messaging that gets you ahead in like a Clinton era is not the messaging that gets you ahead in a Trump era. So you have to know how to change with the times.
And even more relevantly, the messaging that'll get you ahead in a primary doesn't necessarily do it for general, which is the problem that I think Trump's going to have. Which is honestly, like I said, as if I have to say, my money currently is still on Biden. If I had to guess who wins this thing,
Sam.
Yeah, I would also bet on Biden. If I had to bet money, I'd bet on Biden. I think the scariest thing would be if Trump wins again. I mean, like he said earlier, right? It would lead to a government falling into a halt.
It'll kill all of us.
Yeah, we are at the end of the show, though, guys. We're at the end of the show. We have to cut it.
Did you want to take any callers or anything? I'm sorry.
No, we don't really have time for callers, and we had too much like technical issues, which really sucks. And I really apologize. Yeah, we had good questions too, but I just want to say, Vosh, thank you for coming on. You're always welcome again to show up whenever you want.
Please do come again. Yeah.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me on. And obviously, John, I know we disagreed a lot, but I still really enjoyed talking with you, and I appreciate being able to talk to you.
100%. I got to tell you, man, I was warned heavily, but you know what? You're not so bad.
No, Vosh is not bad.
Thank you.
I do want to say though that we do run shows. One second, John. I do want to say that we do run shows throughout the week. On tomorrow, John has an interview, right? With
Brian Kaplan. He's a more right-wing market economist. So, me and Vosh talked about economics. We're going to talk about it with Brian Kaplan, who has a...
Yeah, Vosh can even call in to talk with Brian
You're going
to
socialism pill him, right? You're going to...
I will actually, because he's have a different opinion, I'll talk to him about, like, shouldn't we value the nation over the international? Shouldn't we be, like, a little bit protectionist, maybe, stuff like that. Well, we'll see.
I think you should socialize.
On Tuesday after Labor Day, I actually am having Cornell West come in on my show to have a conversation. Shit. Yeah, which should be fun. And again, Vosh, you can call in. Any of these shows are open to recording. Yeah.
Anytime.
Tart, who are you talking to this week?
Zimmerman, Thursday, 8 p.m. EST or 5 p.m. PST, depending on where you're at.
He's an
And Thomas is doing his show on the philosophy of science.
Yeah, and I have an interview on September 9th. Who did I just say a minute ago? Richard Wilkman. Wait 1 second. It is Richard Winfield on September 9th at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. He is a metaphysician, an epistemologist, and an ethicist.
Yeah. So that should be fun. We're also 2 live events are planned. We're gonna release them soon. They're gonna be in New York. It'll be the 2 live events between philosophers. They're gonna talk about UFOs, God, and a bunch of other things, just like the events that happened before 2016. And Vosh, anything else you want to say before we end it?
No, I think we about said it. You know, glory.
No
to,
good plugs or anything.
Yeah, no plugs.
Only to myself when I'm Vosh everywhere. I'm
Vosh
a
everywhere.
spiteful disengagement with basically everyone else in the online left. So I have a few plugs to make. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, of course. Oh, and you're playing Starfield, right?
No, oh wait,
Don't tell me
absolutely,
anything.
absolutely. What, another Bethesda game? Are you kidding me? Absolutely. I played Starfield when it was called Fallout 3. I played Starfield when it was called Skyrim. I've had enough. I'm done.
No, real hot take. What do you think about IGN's rating? You think it's legitimate, or you think it's illegitimate?
I think it's probably too high. I genuinely hate Bethesda as a studio. Like, I actively despise them.
Okay.
We have such short memories. Does anyone remember, like, 76? Does anyone remember how they lied and misrepresented for years and years, and then afterwards every damage control stuff they did was also them lying? And they it was the worst, like, biggest set of fuck-ups I've ever seen from a game company. It was, like, so bad. But then it's like, oh, Starfield, and everyone's like, woo, new game. And then in 2 years, everyone's going to be like, wow, you play vanilla Starfield? That game's only good with 57 mods. Here's the mod list. Good luck not having your computer crash. It's like,
So what game are you playing? So what game are you playing tonight, or when you're playing game?
I'm just playing, well, at this exact second, I'm playing Terraria. But I'm playing Armored Core 6 next. That's the next one up. Donkey apparently didn't like it, so I have to see whether or not Donkey is bad or Donkey's good.
Nice.
Amazing. Send us your PO box. You can message it to Travis. I know you've spoken with him, and we'll send you your shirt.
Yeah, so, absolutely. I can't. I'm flushed. I never win anything. Thank you.
Of course. And again, you're always welcome to come in whenever you want. You see us live, you can jump in whenever. Anyone's always welcome.
Absolutely. Well, I hope you all have a wonderful evening, and I apologize for the tech issues.
No, it's on my end. It's okay. Thank you so much. We
Take care.
appreciate
Thank you, brother.
And of course, everyone like, subscribe, follow us. We have this on every Sunday, and we'll see you around. And as always, stay thinking, everyone.
Stay thinking.
See you guys.
We need to be able to have conversations.
Oop, there we go. That was a video play at the end right there. How are the vibes after all? Pretty chill. I feel like that was pretty chill, in my personal humble opinion. Guys, I'm not calling into the Cornel West. If I'm gonna talk to Cornel West, I'll just have him on my show. I'm not gonna call in to talk I would just have him on stream. Oh my god, Vosh, what a nightmare. You know what is a nightmare? Can you believe I haven't gotten the sextant yet? That's so bullshit, man. Come on, man. When am I getting it's literally the last piece of the cell phone. When am I getting it? The sextant is like a 5% chance. Yeah, and I've done a bunch of fishing quests, so I think it should be a 100% chance, actually. I will never find sex, it's true. Here, wait, last try, okay, last try. We'll see if we get it here, alright? Everyone pray. Is everyone praying? Here, let me turn up the good-ass Terraria soundscape. Everyone pray, okay? We're gonna get this fish, and we're gonna turn it in, and we're gonna get the sextant. Can we... This is too small of a pool, because the majority of the water is blocked. I have to go over here. Angler gives you better rewards with NPC app, and I don't care. Was John a fascist or a retard? John is smart and not a fascist. I think John is probably one of those John is one of those social conservatives who's very easily lured into fascism because he's susceptible to the narratives. Everything is like primed for him. He thinks that people are like naturally greedy and corrupt, so he has a low opinion of institutions and social standards. He has a very strong like impression of self-determination, even though he opposes self-governance and government in like the economy. He doesn't seem to take like he doesn't seem to be that like concerned with the media manipulation present behind all the transpanic stuff. Sounds like you're describing a libertarian. Libertarians are all either fascists or on the way to being fascists. the shift that I have seen with libertarians has been so insane as a product of like the Mises Institute infiltrating the American Libertarian Party. It's like so they hardlined, you know? The literal last libertarian that we had, there we go. The last libertarian that we had on stream, the first thing I asked him was like, hey, how do you feel about the Civil Rights Act? And he's like, well, we'd have to get rid of it, of course. You know, like, it's, yeah. Where's the angler? Did he? Oh, just didn't see him. Huh? No way! Yes! Chat, your prayers and mine have been answered. That's what I'm talking about. Finally, sex discovered. Prayer does work and I'm religious now. Okay, let's combine all this. Weather radio, Fisherman's Pocket Guide. Give me the fish finder. Now give me the PDA. Now give me the cell phone. Nice. Boop. All right. We can now have all kinds of crazy info displayed on the side. Look at all that information. Make the shell phone. I don't have the demon shell, but I'll make it soon. I have the ocean shell. Favorite your stuff, please? What do you mean? It's favorited. What do you want? Shut up. Okay, wait. What do we need? We need depth. I don't care about position. I don't care about movement speed. I don't care about DPS. I don't care about kill count. Creature count? Creature count is fine. Rare creatures is fine. Treasure, not right now. Not till hard mode. Fishing, don't care. Moon phase, don't care. Weather, don't care. Time, yes. Nice. All right.